Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name's Colleen and welcome to another series Sunday. If you've been following my channel for a while, you will know that I have not yet finished a series since my last update, but I have decided to do series updates for series that are longer than, say, 5 books. Because it's a lot to talk about in one video if it's more than 5 books. So today we are going to be doing a series update for The Wheel of Time. So I've been reading this for 3 years now. The first book I actually did a review for by itself, which will be linked up above and down below if you want to watch it. Some people didn't like it, so I guess watch at your own risk. But today I'm going to talk about the first 5 books. I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to give some basic plot points, so if you haven't read the entire series or have only read to book 3 or whatever, just don't watch when I hold up the next book. When I get to my ratings for each of them, I will put all the books down and be just like this, so you will easily be able to tell when the spoilers for you are done. And then I'm thinking I'm going to talk about my favorite characters a little bit, because I do definitely have some favorites and some not favorites and some favorites. I guess we'll start by just telling you all of the first 5 books in this series. So we have The Eye of the World, which is the first book. It was published in 1990, so 3 years before I was born. A good time to be alive. The second book is The Great Hunt. Then we have The Dragon Reborn and The Shadow Rising. And finally we have The Fires of Heaven. So all these books follow the same cast of characters and center around a guy named Rand al'Thor, who is the character that fulfills our chosen one trope in this. But actually there's 3 chosen ones in this book, because his best friends Perrin and Matrim are also part of this chosen one group, though Rand is the big chosen one, and then they're smaller chosen ones. There is a lot of tropes that happen for the first time in these books, so if you don't like tropes, maybe the series isn't for you, but I personally love them and think that they're all very well done. So let's get into it. So I mean, if you haven't read these books, I'm not really going to spoil too much for any of them during my synopsis, except for the fact that if you listen to the synopsis of book 2, it will spoil things that happen at the end of book 1, etc., etc. So let's start. So in The Eye of the World, which is the first book, we are introduced to our cast of characters that live in this village. Rand is a sheep herder. Brilliant. Matrim is always getting into trouble, and Perrin is the good one of the group, but also is always getting in trouble because he's hanging out with Matrim and Rand. We also meet the wisdom of the village, Nynaeve is the wisdom, so she's kind of like the healer, but also she predicts the weather and generally helps solve disputes. And we also meet Moriane, who is an Aes Sedai, who is a magical being, her guardian Lan, and Ygwin, who is not at all related to them, but the prettiest girl in the village. We also briefly meet Tam, who's Rand's father, and we also meet one of my favorite characters, Tom, who is a gleeman, which is kind of like a traveling minstrel. So in our first little bit we meet all of those, and of course immediately chaos appears, because with so much power in one spot, how could it not? And Trollocs attack their village. And Trollocs are these half-man creations, I guess, by the Dark Lord in this world. So they have animal heads, animal limbs, but vaguely human bodies, and walk upright, and are very terrifying from what I've gathered from the novels, and make me feel uncomfortable. They eat humans, they're generally mean and super vicious, and while the Trollocs are attacking, Rand fights them a little bit, but mostly just hides, because why would a shepherd know how to fight them? And he discovers that his father has a heron marked sword, which is the sign of a great swordsman, but he's like, "You're a farmer, why do you have this?" And immediately he dies. So Rand is left with many questions. And because this happens, Moiraine is like, "We need to hightail it out of here because clearly we are in danger." And they leave the village and go on a grand adventure. They all get in lots of trouble. They all find out a lot of weird things. Some of them find out that they have magic powers, and it's generally a good time. So, yes. Clearly, I love this book. I think that's a pretty good description. I don't think I really spoiled anything that happens outside of the first 100 pages or so. But that's what you get for watching my videos. The second book is The Great Hunt. And in this, our friends kind of split up a little bit. Egwene and Nynaeve decide that they are going to become Aes Sedai because they are both magical. Well, Nynaeve doesn't really want to, but she's like, "Can't let Egwene out of my sights. She's going to get in trouble if I'm not there to protect her," which later we might find out is perhaps not the case. But, so they're off training to be Aes Sedai, and they're looking for the Horn of Valir for the rest of our characters. So Rand, Perrin, and Mat are all like, "Gotta find this horn because it's going to call the hordes of undead to help them fight the Dark Lord when all of the seals are broken," which is what this series is apparently leading towards, as we discover as we read through these books. We also, by this time, have met one of my favorite characters. He's an Ogier named Loyal, which I think is a very fitting name for him, and he's also one of my favorite characters. And we find out in this book that some of the characters that we thought might be dead are not actually dead, which is a huge relief to me personally. We meet some other sketchy characters that I don't like, and we find out more about Rand's abilities. So, great book, great follow-up. Then we have The Dragon Reborn, and for me this was more of a transitional novel. And to be honest with you, I don't remember a lot about this book. So, in this one they're traveling around. Rand is pretty angsty about what's going on in his life. He's unhappy. Our group has split up. It is fractured still. And you're just kind of learning more about the characters and what's going on. But I found that this one was more of Rand's perspective than any of the other ones. The other ones have been a little bit more balanced. And they're just traveling around trying to figure out what's next, and Moraine's trying to control his destiny, and he's really fighting against that, which one would. And they're trying to help Mat because he's gotten in trouble and doesn't want help. And there's a lot of transitional things happening in this book, which all leads up to the Shadow Rising. So in this book they're in the Great Waste, which is a very interesting place. It's where the Ael live, who are Rand's people. In this book he proves that he is the Dragon Reborn. He is the one that's going to fight the Dark Lord when it is time, by gathering a whole bunch of titles. He also defeats a city in this book, and it's very action-packed. There's some good battle sequences. Also a lot of traveling though, so it's kind of like you get both, which is something that I enjoy. I like a book that has a varying pace. And in this book our group fractures even more because Perrin actually goes back home to Two Rivers and takes one of his friends with him, and Loyal. And lots of interesting things happen. They're traveling in the ways more in this book than they had before, and learning why they're so dangerous. Again, great. Which brings us to The Fires of Heaven. This for me was another transitional book. You have Mat really fighting against his role as one who weaves the pattern under Rand and wanting to just go back, go home, be with Perrin and be a normal person again, but keeps on getting roped back in. And you have Rand, who's kind of starting to more accept his destiny, but is really worried that he's starting to go insane, and working on controlling his destiny more instead of just letting it be controlled by the wheel, which is great and exactly what he's supposed to be doing, and it seems to be working out well from him. And then you have Ygwin is with him, but Nanny Eve and Elaine, who I don't like, are off trying to find the Dark Aj, which are Aes Sedai, who are pledged to the Dark One, and they've been hunting them now for 2 books, and it's going all right, but it's not the most interesting part of the story. And it was an okay book. But I'm putting it down now because we are exiting the spoiler section and back into the regular part of the video where I'm just going to talk about my ratings for the book. So, if I'm not mistaken, I rated this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books of all time now. It is on that list, and it will be forever. And I'm super glad that I picked it up. It was everything that I wanted and expected. I rated The Great Hunt 4 stars. It was a great sequel to the first one, but wasn't quite as good. Like, there's just a little something missing in it for me. The Dragon Reborn, I also rated 4 stars. It was good. A little bit better than The Great Hunt, but like not enough to be like a 5-star book. Then I read The Shadow Rising, and boy, this was a good one. I enjoyed this one a lot. I think I rated this 5 stars. I either rated a 5 or a 4, and there was just such a good mix of things happening in it that I really enjoyed. And Perrin plays a larger part in this book, which I adore. And finally, for this, Fires of Heaven, I have rated it 3 stars. It just, you know, it was a transitional book. It was fine. It just was missing something for me. And now we'll get into my favorite characters. Perrin, obviously, I like him. I think his things with communicating with wolves is really cool. I like that he's a sensible character. I like his love plotline as well. That was really well done. Obviously, I love Loyal. I would love to see more Loyal. He's bookish. He wants to have adventures. He's like over 100 years old, but is still considered quite young for the Ogier, which I think is just hilarious. And he's just such a wholesome character. And of course, I love Tom. I think Tom might be my overall favorite character. There's just something about him that reaches into my soul. Now, of course, in later books, Rand's love life does get complicated. But for me, it's always going to be him and Gwyn. I love them together. I think they're right for each other, but I don't think they're ever going to be together, which makes me a little bit sad, but also adds a good tension to the plot, so I'm not mad about it. Out of the girls, I would say Ygwin is my favorite, or the women. She has a lot of good characters for her, and as well as Elvena. I might have pronounced that wrong. She's one of the Ale, and I like how sassy she is. She has a lot of aspects to her that remind me of some of my other favorite characters from book series, which I really appreciate. And she also adds some tension, as well as Min. Min is great as well. She's like the tomboy of the women in the book, and that's great. There's not too many characters that I actively dislike, but one of them is definitely Elaine. I don't like her. I find her whiny. But really, she's the only one that seems to get under my skin. So, I mean, overall, I would say so far this is a 4-star series for me. Right now, I'm reading book 6, so in the next 6 months, perhaps, you'll hopefully be getting a update on my series when I get to book 10. And then I will read to the end of the series and the prologue for the 3rd part of this, and then do a full series wrap-up where I'll just talk about things more generally and not go into depth about plot and things like that, as I have done here. Let me know if you have any questions about the series down below, if you're thinking about reading it, or if this is the first time that you're hearing about it. Again, I don't know if I said this, but it is adult fantasy for those of you who might be wondering that, and it's probably some of the best that I have read. I've read some other popular series. I haven't read any Brandon Sanderson yet, so if you're asking for comparisons to that, I can't tell you that. I can tell you that he did finish off the last 3 books after Robert Jordan died. But what I have read is the Sword of Truth series by Cherry Goodkind, which is not everyone's favorite. I read it as a youth, and I adore it, and I still adore it when I read it. And I've also read George R.R. Martin, which I don't like as much, to leave it at that. If you want more of my thoughts on that, you can watch my review for the 5th book in that series, but I don't really want to go into that here. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the first 5 books of The Wheel of Time. I'm really enjoying the reading experience and being able to share this series with my dad, because it's one of his favorites as well, and that's been very special to me. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next series Sunday, whenever that happens to be, and if you have any series suggestions for me, also drop those down below, but I'll see you next time. Bye!